The night was quiet in Laguna, but what happened would shatter an entire nation. Two young students, full of promise, were stolen from their families and from their future. What began as an ordinary evening ended in unthinkable horror, and the names Eileen Sarmenta and Allan Gomez would forever be remembered as symbols of innocence destroyed by power and corruption. You're listening to Pinoy True Crime Story, where we uncover the Philippines' most haunting and unforgettable cases, told the way they deserve to be remembered. On a quiet night in June 1993, in the province of Laguna, two young lives were brutally taken in a crime so shocking it would forever be etched in the memory of the Philippines. It is the story of Eileen Sarmenta and Allan Gomez, two college students with bright futures ahead of them, whose names became synonymous with innocence, destroyed by greed, power, and corruption. Eileen was just 21 years old, a cheerful student at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She was described as kind, intelligent, and filled with dreams. Allan, 19, was her schoolmate and friend, someone equally full of promise. They were young people with simple lives, no enemies, and every reason to believe that their best years were still to come. But their lives ended in one of the most heinous crimes the country has ever known. It was June 28, 1993, when the unimaginable happened. That night, armed men abducted Eileen and Allan. Witnesses later testified that the abduction was not random. The men who took them were allegedly working for Antonio Sanchez, the then mayor of Calauan, Laguna. Sanchez was a powerful man, feared and respected in his town, with influence that stretched far beyond local politics. But behind his smiling face as a public official lurked a reputation for ruthlessness, and on that night, his name would be forever tied to tragedy. Eileen and Allan were forced into a van. Inside, Allan was beaten mercilessly. He tried to fight back, but he was outnumbered. Eileen, terrified, was taken not because of money, not because of politics, but because she was meant to be a gift. Later testimony revealed that she was presented to Mayor Sanchez by his men, a horrifying act that stripped away her dignity and reduced her to an object in the eyes of her captors. That night, Allan's life was violently ended. His body was discovered later, riddled with gunshot wounds, his resistance crushed by sheer brutality. For Eileen, the nightmare stretched longer. She was taken to a rest house where she suffered the unthinkable. Repeatedly violated, her cries silenced by the power of men who thought themselves untouchable. When it was over, she too was killed, her body discarded like evidence of a crime they thought would soon be forgotten. But the people of Calauan, and later the entire Philippines, would not forget. The brutality of the Sarmenta Gomez case captured headlines across the nation. Newspapers screamed of the horror. TV broadcasts carried the details night after night, and the country asked the same question: how could something this evil happen? The investigation was swift, but not without fear. The suspects included not only Mayor Sanchez, but also his trusted men, bodyguards and associates who carried out his orders. During the trial, witnesses painted a chilling picture of what had happened. They spoke of the mayor's obsession, of the way his men had treated Eileen like property, and of the violent end that both students suffered. The testimony was damning, and it shattered any illusion that Sanchez was simply a respected politician. The trial became one of the most followed cases in Philippine history. Courtrooms were packed, the press covered every detail, and the families of the victims sat through heartbreaking testimony, forced to hear about the final hours of their children's lives. The nation demanded justice. For many Filipinos, the case was more than a crime story. It was a test of whether the justice system could stand up to power, whether truth could triumph over fear. In 1995, justice seemed to prevail. Mayor Antonio Sanchez and several of his men were found guilty of the rape and murder of Eileen Sarmenta and the murder of Allan Gomez. The court sentenced them to multiple terms of reclusion perpetua, effectively life imprisonment. For the families of the victims, it was a moment of vindication, though no sentence could ever bring back the young lives that were stolen. For years, Sanchez remained behind bars, but the story did not end there. Decades later, in 2019, his name once again filled the headlines. News broke that he might be released early under the Good Conduct Time Allowance Law, a measure that reduced prison terms for inmates who showed good behavior. The announcement shocked the nation. How could a man convicted of such heinous crimes be considered for early release? Outrage spread across the Philippines. Families of the victims spoke out. Human rights advocates protested, and ordinary citizens voiced their anger on social media. The uproar was so intense that the plan for Sanchez's release was halted. The government backtracked, assuring the public that he would remain in prison. But the controversy reignited painful memories, reminding everyone of the brutality of the crimes and the fragility of justice in the face of power. In March 2021, Antonio Sanchez died while serving his sentence. His death closed a chapter, but the memory of his crimes lives on. The Sarmenta Gomez case remains a haunting reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, of how innocence can be destroyed by those who believe they are above the law. Even today, the names Eileen Sarmenta and Allan Gomez are spoken with sorrow and respect. Their story is retold in classrooms, in documentaries, in true crime discussions like this one, not to sensationalize, but to remind us of the cost of corruption, violence, and abuse of power. They were young students, with families who loved them and futures waiting to be lived. That was stolen from them, but their memory continues to inspire the fight for justice. The Sarmenta Gomez case is more than a crime story. It is a reflection of society, a mirror showing both the darkest side of humanity and the enduring hope that justice, though delayed and fragile, can still be found. And for the families left behind, for the communities that mourned, and for a nation that watched in horror, their story is a lesson that must never be forgotten. The story of Eileen Sarmenta and Allan Gomez is one of the darkest in Philippine history. It reminds us that true evil can wear the mask of authority, and that justice, though fragile, is worth fighting for. Their lives were cut short, but their memory continues to demand that the nation never forget. This has been Pinoy True Crime Story. If this case moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so more people can hear the stories of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Until the next story, stay safe and remember, justice may be delayed, but it should never be denied.